Certainly, since you've referenced key point 1 but haven't specified its content in this message, I'll assume it's from your previous prompt titled, Speak God. And key point 1 was likely something foundational like, God is not a distant entity, but the highest ideal we strive toward. Here's the 450-word segment based on that idea, in the tone of Jordan Peterson. When we talk about God, most people picture an external force, an old man in the sky, some abstract spirit, or a being from Scripture. But that image is, at best, a metaphor, and at worst, a misunderstanding. The concept of God isn't just about supernatural belief. It's about what we orient our lives around. And that matters, because the thing you aim at, that becomes your God. It becomes your organizing principle, the North Star that structures your thoughts, your actions, your sacrifices. You see, human beings are deeply symbolic creatures. We don't just live biologically, we live psychologically and spiritually. We don't just respond to stimuli. We aim, we pursue, we assign meaning to things. And that means we always have a hierarchy. Some things matter more than others. And at the top of that hierarchy is what you're ultimately serving. That's your God. So when I say God is the highest ideal we strive toward, I'm not speaking purely theologically. I'm pointing to something psychological, philosophical, and existential. God is that force or principle you regard as most worthy of devotion. For some, tragically, that's money. For others, it's fame, control, or pleasure. But those things fail. They're finite. They collapse under pressure. The idea of God as the highest possible good, truth, love, order, beauty, justice, that's something robust. That's something worth orienting your life toward. Not because someone told you to, but because without such a principle, you collapse into chaos. WWs. You don't have a transcendent goal to serve. Your life becomes fragmented. You get pulled in every direction. You drown in trivialities. And that's why historically societies have always reached for the divine, not because they were ignorant, but because they understood something profound. You become what you worship. You become like the ideal you serve. So if your ideal is rooted in truth and meaning, your life becomes structured around those things. This isn't superstition. This is the fundamental architecture of the human soul. So the real question is this: what is the highest good you can conceive of? What's the most noble, worthy, beautiful thing you can imagine giving your life to? Answer that honestly, and then act as if it's real. Speak it into being through your choices. That is the beginning of faith. That is the beginning of God. Because in the end, we don't just believe in God. We aim toward Him, certainly. Assuming key point 2 of your speech, Speak God, is something along the lines of belief in God is not passive. It demands responsibility and transformation. Here's the 450-word expansion crafted in Jordan Peterson's intellectual psychological style. When people say they believe in God, the question we often forget to ask is, what does that actually mean? Because real belief, true, embodied belief, is not merely a matter of stating a creed or affirming something intellectually. If you say you believe in God, the next question is, how has that changed you? If your belief doesn't reshape your behavior, your values, your sacrifices, then it's not belief, it's lip service. Belief in God, if taken seriously, isn't just comfort, it's a call to responsibility. And that's terrifying. Because to genuinely orient yourself toward a divine ideal means you have to confront everything within you that isn't aligned with it. You can't walk toward truth without facing the lies. You can't move toward meaning without confronting the chaos. And that's the price of belief. It's not just a warm feeling in your chest. It's the willingness to wrestle with yourself. It's Jacob wrestling with the angel in the dark night of the soul. That's not metaphor. It's the lived experience of every person who has chosen to align themselves with something higher. If you believe in a moral lawgiver, then you're accountable to that standard. If you believe in divine love, then your relationships must reflect it. If you claim to follow a God of justice, then you are responsible for becoming an agent of that justice in your own domain. Now, this isn't about perfection. It's about direction. It's about the orientation of your soul. You can't control everything, but you can move toward what's meaningful rather than what's expedient. You can clean up your own room before trying to change the world. That's where the divine begins, in the discipline of daily action. And here's the paradox. The more responsibility you take on, the more meaning emerges. The weight you carry becomes the very thing that strengthens your spirit. That's the mystery behind sacrifice. It's not loss, it's transformation. You burn away what's lesser in order to become something greater. So, belief in God is not about words. It's not about labels. It's about becoming. It's the conscious, daily decision to live as though your actions matter infinitely, because they do. And if you dare to believe in God, then live like it, because the world is watching and so is your soul. Assuming, key point 3 parts of your speech, speak God is. God is not just an external being. He is the highest ideal you strive toward. Here is the 450-word expansion in Jordan Peterson's tone and depth. When people hear the word God, they often picture a being, some figure in the sky, remote, judgmental, or benevolent, depending on their upbringing. But that concept, while common, is only the beginning of understanding. It's not complete. It's not deep enough, because God isn't merely an external entity watching from above. In the most transformative sense, God is the embodiment of the highest ideal you can conceive, and more. Think about that for a moment. What happens when you truly identify your highest good? When you define what is most meaningful, most noble, most courageous, and then you aim yourself toward it fully, sacrificially, and honestly. You're not just pursuing a goal, you're submitting yourself to a principle higher than you, something that organizes your potential and disciplines your chaos. That striving is spiritual. It is religious in the truest sense of the word. If you look across religious traditions, you see a recurring pattern. The idea that God is not just out there, but in here, shaping your conscience, informing your sense of right and wrong, and calling you to live not in comfort, but in truth. The ancient Hebrews understood this when they named God with reverence too sacred to pronounce. The Greeks grasped it in their pursuit of logos, divine reason. And Christ, in Christian tradition, is the ultimate symbol of the ideal made flesh, the Word becoming man. What does that mean practically? It means you cannot separate your relationship with the divine from your relationship with who you ought to be. If God represents truth, justice, love, discipline, then every time you lie, every time you betray, every time you act out of cowardice, you violate that ideal. You fall short of God, and you know it. That's your conscience speaking. That's the divine spark reminding you of your potential and your failure to meet it. This is why pursuing your highest ideal is not ego, it's humility. You're not declaring yourself perfect. You're admitting how far you have to go, and you're choosing to walk the path anyway. That's faith, that's courage. That's a life worth living. Because in the end, God isn't simply what you believe. God is who you become in your relentless pursuit of the good, the true, and the beautiful, especially when it's hardest.